So yesterday when the cold rain was pelting you in the face, were you thinking about summer? Could you just close your eyes amidst those piercing raindrops and think, 90 degrees. Maybe you were dreaming about it. Maybe you had a hard time dreaming about it. I'm not sure. You might have been questioning spring yesterday. But interestingly, after the El Nino winter, some meteorologists are saying La Nina tends to follow, and they're seeing evidence of that now, and that could mean conditions that were a lot different from yesterday. Mark Torregrossa is the chief meteorologist at MLive and the person who presides over farmerweather.com. He is among those, and he joins us this morning. Hey there, Mark.
Hey, good morning.
Thanks for the time today. You've been studying this whole thing, and the El Nino mild winter is now giving way to the La Nina phenomenon.
Yeah, and everybody needs a reminder because I always get asked. El Nino is when the Pacific Ocean water between South America and over toward Australia is warmer than normal, and now it's cooling down rapidly. And La Nina is a term we made up after El Nino. And La Nina is just the opposite. The water out there turns colder than normal, and that is happening right now.
So what does that mean for us? Well,
we've looked at years when El Nino switches to La Nina, and I found 9 years that happened. I can't remember them all, 54, 64, a couple in the 70s, but some should stick out. 1988. 1995, 2010.
Hello, yeah.
Yeah. And so what I found was that 8 of 9 of those years when El Nino switched to La Nina, 8 of 9, the summer months, June, July, and August for a meteorologist, were warmer than normal. And 7 of 9 were drier than normal.
And that 2010 was that stretch of 100 degrees, wasn't it?
No, that was 2012,
okay.
About 2 years into the La Nina, which is another conversation that the switchover from El Nino to La Nina is a drying and a warming pattern from the southwest part of the Corn Belt, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, spreading our way late in the season. So my bet is if we get unbearable heat, it's going to be in the second half of the summer. But if the La Nina continues through the winter and it strengthens into next year, then all of the Midwest tends to have a pretty good chance of being hot and dry.
All right. That's interesting. We'll talk more about that coming up in just a minute with Mark Torregrossa from MLive, chief meteorologist there, and farmerweather.com. When we come back, Mark Torregrossa is with us, chief meteorologist at MLive and farmerweather.com. And you tantalized us there, and then we took a break. But you were saying La Nina has the potential to last more than just a few months.
Yeah, it's just like an El Nino. The typical length is 6 months to 18 months. We've had them last up to 2 years. And it's really hard to say exactly how long we'll last because we're just getting into the, we're pretty much in 1980 when it comes to ocean forecasting if you compared it to day-to-day weather forecasting. So it's just getting going really here.
So now you made also a point that if it were to affect us with hot weather, that would be in late summer.
Yeah, I think if it's unbearable heat, typically, like I said, it would start with really hot weather in the southwest part of the plains, the Corn Belt. Although every El Nino and La Nina, we always want to emphasize with an asterisk there, they're all a little different. And we went into El Nino this winter saying, this one could be a little different too because we got a couple other things going on. And what I'm seeing right now that's kind of bizarre in the weather pattern is all this heat up in southern Canada. You've probably heard about the forest fires in Alberta.
Yeah.
And today, southern Canada, north of North Dakota, is going to be around 90 degrees. And so the pocket of heat that's odd that's developing right now is to our northwest as opposed to our southwest right now. So we'll just have to watch it. But my bet would be that we will see the heat build through the summer. We've got a ton going on. How much time do we have, Richard? Do we have a couple hours to talk about this here?
Sure.
Because we have one other odd thing going on that can influence our weather greatly, and it's a Bermuda high. And I don't know if we've talked about this yet, but they're typically in June, July, August, September, a normal weather feature forms out in the Atlantic over Bermuda. Meteorologists, we call it Bermuda high. Again, it's not made up. We've talked about this for 40, 50 years. But that Bermuda high, with its clockwise flow, brings flow out of the Caribbean, up through the Gulf of Mexico, and straight northward through the eastern U.S. Up to Michigan. So a Bermuda high, a persistent Bermuda high, is a very humid and very warm pattern. My bet is the Bermuda high is going to dominate the first half of our summer, hot or warm and humid, numerous thunderstorms, possibly significant rainfalls in that kind of flow, and then we're going to transition to the drying and the hotter dry of the La Nina later in the summer. All of it spells, to me, warmer than normal. Now, some people would not believe that with what we have going on right now. We had sleet and small hail in the air yesterday, and like you said, a cold rain. As soon as it started raining, it would drop down to about 38, 40 degrees. The other thing that I found, with some help from Bill Marino from the Weather Service, he does some great research, we looked at all of the winters that had all warm months, October through March, all warm. 6 winters were like that. 6 of those winters had cold Aprils. 3 of the following Mays were extremely cold. 2 were warmer than normal. 1 was normal. So May could go either way. And then he also found, in looking at that, June, July, August, all of the summers were all warmer and drier than normal. So several things point toward a dramatic turnaround at some point.
Wow. So when we come back in a minute, we'll talk about the idea that if La Nina lasts into the winter, what that could mean for us once again. And we'll talk a little bit about agriculture, too. What kind of challenges or not does the weather present for us after this mild winter and then potentially this hot stuff? We'll discuss that coming up in just a minute with Mark Torregrossa. Mark Torregrossa is here from MLive and farmerweather.com. So, all right, if we stay in a La Nina pattern into the winter, that sounds like it has similar effects to El Nino in that it would be warmer and drier?
Nope, just the opposite.
Oh, got it.
Well, I shouldn't say just the opposite. Each of these ocean cycles has different effects on different seasons. For example, El Nino, pretty much only a winter warming phenomena. If an El Nino is continuing into summer, there's really not much correlation. However, when the La Nina starts, there's a summer correlation, there's a warm fall correlation, and then the winter tends to, in Michigan, lean toward being colder than normal, and it can outside of the snow belts lean toward being a little drier than normal, because one thing that is maybe a little more evident in a La Nina is a track of storms up the east coast. And we get on the backside of those storms, we get cold northwesterly winds. That's not unheard of in winter, but maybe it dominates a little more in La Nina. And then also we kind of stay out of the storm track, and so we can lean toward having the chance of being a little bit less in snow. So it can be cold and a little drier than normal.
Okay, but not a lot drier.
Right. And then here's what sets us up for the second year. If a La Nina continues into the next year, we've had a lack of precipitation in the winter months, and then we take off with the heat again, and that's why the second year of a La Nina can have a much bigger impact on Michigan's agriculture.
How did El Nino affect agriculture? Do we know?
I think it didn't really have a whole lot of effect. We had a lot of winter precipitation, which, again, that was the asterisk on this El Nino. We're supposed to be dry during an El Nino winter, but this one had a storm track that came right at us. So we had ample moisture. That's good for the trees, good for the lake levels if you want them to continue to come up.
Mm-hmm.
But the main thing is what happens in the spring. Now, the El Nino problem can be if you're so warm that the fruit trees blossom early. And actually, this colder weather we've had in April and up to now has been really a blessing for the fruit industry in Michigan because it slowed the trees down. And I think we're out of the risk of a devastating early freeze for the trees. Now, on the corn, soybean, what we call the row crop area, right now the farmers just want some dry weather for a week or so they can get finished planting everything.
Yeah, there was some concern about that here among some of the local experts that, we had that burst of warmth and then, boy, things started blooming and the concern that we might freeze again after that. But it didn't seem to materialize so much, which is good.
No, it really backed off. Once we went from a warm March, 6 degrees above normal, if we were pacing it that way, we would have had problems with the fruit industry. But then we shifted to about 2 degrees below normal temperature in the month of April, which is colder than normal, but not extremely cold. But that was able to slow down the fruit development, the fruit blossoms, I should say.
Yeah, I have some fruit trees in my yard, and they are really blossoming now, and they don't seem to have been hampered. It would seem to be following along what you're saying. Now, as you look at La Nina, does that have potential to be good or bad for the ag industry at this point?
Well, if we go too hot and dry late in the season, as far as for corn and soybeans, that could reduce the yield some. I always still think that if we get hot and dry from the La Nina this year, then Illinois is hotter and drier, and Iowa and Missouri, Nebraska are hotter and drier. So those areas will be impacted more by yield. And in Michigan, if it doesn't dry out early enough, we could have phenomenal crops because we could have the heat finally needed to grow a crop, and we could have the rainfall needed. If you get past early August with rain, corn crop is usually made. Soybeans need the rain into September. They could be impacted more. So it could impact us, but it's probably going to impact areas to the south and west more than it does us.
All right. And so La Nina then would be most evident not until June.
You can't put a time frame on it, but I would say late July, August, and it would really be evident in August. And in September, when we should start to cool down, we could stay fairly summer-like through much of summer. And fall could be quite warm, too, in a La Nina, October and November.
All right. Interesting. Watch for Mark's blogs at MLive.com. Mark Torregrossa, Chief Meteorologist there. And, of course, if you're into weather for agriculture specifically, look at Mark's website, farmerweather.com, and you're updating that constantly, I imagine.
Yeah, and I'm using automatic data, too. I'm pulling from some of the models. You can see a radar forecast out 84 hours, which a lot of farmers like because, they want to know if the rain coming on Saturday is a quick one or if it's a all-day type rain. And by the way, the rain coming on Saturday is a quick one. I believe it's probably being overhyped or over a forecast. I think it's probably about a 3-hour window of off and on showers. And in your area, if you get a tenth or 2/10, I would be surprised.
All right, good, because we have plans on Saturday.
Everybody does.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Mark Torregrossa, MLive, and farmerweather.com.